Hi, welcome to All Things Divorce. I'm Launi Sheldon, the host of All Things Divorce. Today we have with us Nicole Stoutner
Hi.
and Annette Burns. Thank you guys both for being here. So about Annette, she is a family law specialist and has practiced in Arizona since 1984. She is the past president of the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, former fellow of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. She's really done everything, and there's a longer bio on another podcast. I don't want to go into too much. She's been on Super Lawyers forever. She wrote a book. She wrote the most recent, I think, book for the BIF, or co-wrote it, BIF for Co-Parenting Communication. She's written the handbook for Thompson West Publishers for the family law rules, which is great. Anyone who does not have that book and who practices family law, or even who's going through a divorce and self-representing, you should get that book because it's very helppful. Nicole has been practicing mostly, I think, in family law, right, since 2005.
Just family law.
And she's received, again, numerous awards. She was actually invited to teach a course at law school as a adjunct professor. She's had again numerous awards. She's worked with the bar, the Maricopa County Bar, the Arizona Bar, the Arizona Chapter of Association for Family and Conciliation Courts, the Arizona Supreme Court Committee on the Impact of Domestic Violence. She was an appointed judicial officer. Again, she was also in Super Lawyers. And so she also has more information on our other podcast. This podcast, again, is for entertainment purposes only. Please do not consider this personal legal advice. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client privilege. All three of us are licensed only in Arizona, and there are different laws in every jurisdiction, and we recommend that you speak with a lawyer in your jurisdiction if you have any questions about what you hear today. So, guys, today we are talking about, I gave a crazy case pattern, which I don't think anyone's happy with except for me, because I used to do this in law school. I'd create my own fact patterns and drive my professors for fun and drive my professors crazy. Because I would just ask them, I would like come up with something like this. So I'm going to read through this fact pattern. It's kind of long, bear with me. This might take 2 podcasts because we don't have, all day, and you guys probably don't want to listen to it all day. But we'll probably do 2 podcasts with this. But here we go. So Nicole will be representing father in this one. And Annette will be representing mother. So the parties were married for 15 years. Wife is 37, husband is 40. There are 3 kids, a 2-year-old son, a 5-year-old son, and a 15-year-old daughter. 5-year-old son is nonverbal autistic, but does know some sign language, and he does that with mom. Father has never learned sign language, but he's fluent in Spanish. I honestly don't know why I put that in there because it's really irrelevant.
That's the only time
I asked about that. I don't.
That was like the red herring. Remember in law school, you get
Good
those? Children are resisting going to fathers. Father believes mother is alienating the children, but mother believes father is the cause of the resistance due to his abuse. All 3 children are going to counseling. Husband earns $350,000 a year. Father had an affair and the children are aware of it. Mother is very angry. Mother took father's name off the school emergency records and listed her sister instead. Mother has also used social media to publicly announce husband's infidelity. The 15-year-old daughter is friends with mother on her social media and is aware of mother's posts. The 15-year-old also has shared and liked many of mother's posts about father. Wife is not currently employed, but has a teaching degree and probably could probably earn about $45,000. However, the 5-year-old cannot be put in regular school, and there's no openings until next year. Nicole, we talked about this for the school. Why can't he go to a regular school? He is, I think I said, he's combative and nonverbal, and he gets overstimulated by people, and the parents have been told by his doctors and therapists that he should go to a special school. So that's what we put in that. Let's see, the child will need to be evaluated to determine the best course for him. Father does not want him tested and thinks the son will do fine in a regular school. But again, although he hasn't been tested specifically for this, he has had other doctors and therapists say he shouldn't go. Wife is currently has an Etsy business, and she says she's earns about 10,000 a year. Husband says she takes home over 30,000 a year. Wife put husband through undergrad and medical school as a teacher and worked after hours as a tutor and a music teacher to make ends meet. There are $100,000 worth of outstanding loans for father for his medical license. Financially, the house payment and the HOA is $6,500 a month. Utilities and household expenses are about $2,500 a month. Groceries, prescriptions, extracurriculars are about $1,600 a month. Gas, hair, miscellaneous other items about $1,000 a month. Father is in a 4-bedroom townhouse with total out-of-pocket costs of monthly expenses of $4,600 a month for food, rent, etc. Father works in the ER. He does 3 12s a night. He often is required to work overtime. He's on call every other Saturday. He has also started a website to create an app. He makes money by advertising and selling supplements. He has not earned a lot of money from it yet, but when he does, it should be a lot, and he won't have to do much work from this point. It's going to be just a website that's just on its own. Wife thinks he will earn millions off of this. Mother alleges father was physically and mentally abusive in front of the kids. Mother has pictures of the bruises and hospital records showing concussion. Mother said she tripped and fell, but now is saying father pushed her down. 5-year-old is in play therapy and making toys fight regularly. Mother wants father to have every other weekend. Father wants 50-50 week on, week off. The parties agree to every other weekend, 1 night a week. Or they already agreed to every other weekend, 1 night a week, but father has a nanny with him at all times with the
Wait,
children.
so father has every other weekend and 1 night a week?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But father has nanny with him at all times with the kids, and he is not involved with the kids and has a difficult time handling the 5-year-old. Currently, father has a nanny working for him, but apparently both father and the 5-year-old are difficult to work for. And this is the 5th nanny in 5 months since he's been out of the house. Father is currently paying the health insurance mother and for mother and children, and the car insurance. Father refuses to pay the electric bills, water bills, yard guys, pool guys, groceries. He cut mother off from all credit cards, emptied the bank accounts. Mother has borrowed $60,000 from her parents so far for bills and attorney fees. The parties have vehicles, 2 sedans, an SUV. Mother typically drove the SUV, but now father wants that for the nanny. Mother is also concerned that father is unlawfully using drugs and has his friend prescribing Ritalin for him. Mother moved out of the marital home, and continues to, or father moved out of the marital home that mother's living in, and he continues to go in the house against mother's wishes. And sometimes he has come in and just moved things around to mess with mother, she believes. He has taken like the computer charger, the phone charger, put pictures of himself up around the house, takes groceries after she buys them and knows she went shopping. She has changed the lock, but since he has a driver's license with the address, the locksmith opens it up and made him a key. Mother is convinced father is hiding money. She has pay stubs that showed that money was being deposited in 2 different accounts, but the picture was somehow deleted from her phone, and she is unaware how father knew she had the pictures. Father also seems to know where mother is at all times, that she talks to her attorney. You know, I want to stop right there. Let's kind of, because there's so much. Let's kind of go to some questions on just what we've got so far. Annette, since you're mom's attorney, what is the first thing like that you would talk to mom about or do for mom?
Well, yeah, I wanted to point out there's so much here. And by the way, there's another page of facts that Launi hasn't even read yet. So there's a lot here. So we can't start talking about these individual issues until we talk about the very first time I'm meeting with this potential client, before she's my client. If I don't have a serious talk with her about the outrageous issues she has and the amount of money these things are going to cost in a divorce, then I am crazy and I'm not a good lawyer.
Yeah.
Because you can't have all of these things unless I decide I'm going to take this case pro bono. And of course, I can do that. I take all kinds of pro bono cases, but the key is you decide up front whether you're going to take it pro bono. You don't do involuntary pro bono because somebody doesn't pay you. So a serious talk with this woman the first time she's in about this is going to cost a lot. Where is the money going to come from? And there is no guarantee, not even close, that husband is going to have to pay all or part of your fees at the end of this. Yes, we can request it, but there's never any guarantee. So she needs to have some serious thoughts about funding everything she needs. From what you've talked about so far, concerns about him entering the house, knowing where she is. She obviously thinks she's being stalked electronically or physically. So you're talking about costs to have her car, her phones swept for bugs and malware, having her house swept for bugs. So you're talking a few $1,000s for that. And the fact that he's coming and going from this house is just ridiculous. And with Nicole on the other side, of course, the first thing I would do is talk to Nicole and try to work this out and say, she has to have exclusive use and possession of the house. We have to have orders for that in writing, signed by the judge. And if Nicole cannot get her client to agree to that, then that's the first thing we ask for in temporary orders, because that's absurd. No one should be expected to give up their privacy like that. So try to work it out with the other attorney, save everybody some money. And if Nicole can't accomplish that, which I know she would try, then go to court. And I think it's pretty certain a judge would grant mother exclusive use and possession. Dad's out. He's got his own place. Why should he be able to come and go?
So would you also ask Nicole for attorney fees to get started?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We know what dad makes. What we don't know in this fact situation is if there's any liquid assets. We know he's got 100 grand in medical school loans, but we don't know if there's any liquid assets. So the fact that he makes $350 a year, that's wonderful, but is there anything saved, or have they been going through every penny? If there's nothing saved, we still ask for significant fees, both from Nicole and from the court. But is he going to be able to pay it? Because the other things I want him to pay include, on top of his own expenses to live, he needs to pay the house payment, the food, the general living. And from the expenses you went through, the house payment and just utilities and household are right about 9 grand. You said 6,500 plus 2,500. And I want him to pay another 2,600 for groceries, prescriptions, extracurriculars, gas, hair. So we're up to 11,600 that I want him to pay for mother. And he's also paying health insurance and car insurance, you said. She's not going to get a lot more than that. I think I'd be very fortunate to get all of those things paid. So is he going to be able to pay any fees up front on top of that? I don't know. I have to be able to tell the court where the fees would come from. So yes, I would try to work those things out with Nicole and see how far we can get. But the first thing is to get my client's expectations in a reasonable place. I'm not going to let her believe that she's going to get $20,000 a month in temporary support and everything she wants. So that's where I start.
Okay, and so Nicole, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I 100% agree. I think I call it a cost benefit analysis. And I do that also in that very first meeting. And I say to the client, what are we, what's it going to cost? What's the result going to be? So, and what are the possible, results, I guess. And I agree. It seems like there's a lot of money here, but there's really not. I mean, when you look at, in terms of what this could cost, when you look at what he makes, so he's making what, 350,000 a year. That's about 29,000 a month, I would guess.
I'm going to round up to 30,000 a month when I argue. So just use 30.
According to Annette, he's making $500,000 a year. No,
Exactly.
But then you've got taxes and things it's got to come out of that. So at the end of the day, that 11,000 that Annette just threw out there, that may be more than half of his take-home income. Way more.
It could.
Yeah. And so that's not going to work, quite frankly, because, the thing to remember is when people divorce or when they separate and they're not together anymore, they can't maintain the same sort of lifestyle, exactly as it was when they were married, because now he's being asked to do that.
Nicole, the law says that the lifestyle should be maintained, right? Isn't that what every client?
I understand that's what it says, but the reality is
it doesn't. It doesn't really. It doesn't say that. That's what all our clients think it says. It doesn't really say that.
And I think the other thing that I think is really important to say is that, people always, I have so many clients or potential clients who call up and say, I want an aggressive attorney, I want to fight this. Coming to agreements or seeking temporary agreements or, temporary resolutions like what Annette was proposing, like maybe we can agree that dad won't go back in the house, or maybe we can agree that dad will give mom some money, is actually a positive, and it's a sign of a good lawyer.
Exactly.
It allows us, the attorneys, to focus on the stuff that is more important or that we can't agree, or the bigger dispute. So we can focus our time on that versus focusing our time on the things that we probably could have come to an agreement had we tried harder and had we worked at that a little bit. It also saves the parties money. If we don't have to go, temporary orders is essentially a mini trial. You have to present evidence. You have to have witnesses. Yes, it's shorter, but you're still expending a ton of money to get ready and to prepare and to be there. And so if you have an agreement and you can avoid that, you've saved the parties possibly thousands. So I think there's advantages to coming to agreement, just like what Annette proposed. And I think it's interesting that there's sort of, or I feel that many times people find that to be a negative thing. Like, I don't want to, we're not going to settle, and I want to litigate, and I want a hardcore litigator. That is, in a family court case, that's not necessarily what you need or want. You want someone that can work through these issues and try to resolve them and spend time on the case and try to find resolutions that's not court-based. And studies have shown that people do much better after the case is over if they were able to come to settlements on their own and reach resolutions on their own versus having the court tell them what to do. So long term, it's a better way to resolve cases too.
So that's, it's a really good point what you guys said. There's a lot of lawyers and folks, when you're out there and you want to get a lawyer, get one who is mediation friendly. I know some people who just say they want a lawyer who's going to kick the other person's ass.
Right.
They want to, drag them into the dirt. They'd rather give all their money to the lawyer than they would, to the other side. I've had clients who were so pissed off they would, spend $20,000 to, stop an extra $100 a month in child support or spousal maintenance, or both. And so, I mean, really look at your lawyer and think about what your end goal is. If your end goal is to just get even, that's not going to do you any good. If your end goal is to get out of this marriage, respectively,
with the best possible result, right?
With the best possible result, talk to an attorney that is mediation friendly. Talk to an attorney that, know that you hear good things about, because there are some attorneys out there who definitely would be happy to just go to trial and not settle and just spend all your money. And then there's lawyers like Annette and Nicole who, will give you the best advice that they can give you, advise you on what that's going to look like. And then if you want to spend your money on them, go spend your money on them.
Can I comment on a couple of the facts we went through already and how that ties into what you just said?
Sure.
You have said about my client, Mother, that number one, she's on social media saying all kinds of crap about dad, and she's got her 15-year-old daughter seeing this stuff. And number two, she turned in an emergency form at school and just left dad off the emergency form and put her own sister on. Those two things, I'm sorry, that's a lot of crap. Just and if my client was actually doing that and persisted in doing it, did not go back and correct it and change her ways and apologize, she wouldn't be my client for very long.
I agree.
And I'm sorry, crap isn't the good word for it, but it's ridiculous. It's extremely concerning behaviors. It's showing she is a high conflict person and going to make everything cost more in the case. And then she's going to complain about how much everything costs. If she cannot learn that those things were wrong and acknowledge it and move forward and change, then I can't represent her. Because
I totally agree.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree. I think to some degree, lawyers, we're not just litigators, right? So we're educators. We're educating our clients, and that's part of it. This is not acceptable behavior. You can't do this. And and I tell my clients, you're paying me to tell you this because I know what I'm talking about. So you can't do this because it doesn't work, and it's not gonna further the case. And I wanted to talk about how harmful those kinds of behaviors are to kids, because that's really something that's near and dear to my heart, and I know it is for yours, Launi, too. But when you involve the children in a divorce, when you put them in the middle, even if it's indirect, I guess, by posting on Facebook and the child seeing it, or by them maybe overhearing a conversation with you and your neighbor, or just in your actions, you looking scared and hiding behind the door when dad comes over, or constantly videoing every second that dad is doing an exchange, you are harming the child. And that's a proven fact. There's a million studies I could quote right now that will tell you that. In the long-term result of these kinds of behaviors is real damage for children. Children with these types of, or who have experienced this kind of high conflict divorce behavior and alienating behavior, have major lifetime issues. They can anxiety, depression, suicidal behaviors.
I think they're actually at higher risk for cancer too, right?
Yeah,
Wasn't that the
I
ACEs
mean,
test?
it is really serious stuff. And, and I understand, I guess, the idea that maybe she didn't know and maybe she needs to be told, but once she hears this, she needs to listen and she needs to change that because it's not acceptable.
Right. That's my point, is if she can learn. The fact that somebody did this, we have all done crazy things. I mean, we all have children.
Not me.
Who on who on this call has not said something to your kids that was probably disparaging of their father? Come on. But
I'm not saying anything.
Well, I'm not divorced, but I know I've done it. But the fact is they have to be able to learn and acknowledge and say, I screwed up. I did wrong. I have not deleted. They can't delete their social media accounts. I have put my social media accounts on inactive, or I have stopped posting because I need to take a breath. I am talking to a counselor about my anger and how to deal with it so it doesn't hurt my children. That's all we want to see. We just want to see growth. The fact that you screwed up once or twice, everybody does that.
Well, so here's a question for you then, Annette. If you have a client who just, there's a lot of people with some mental health issues, and I think they're more prevalent, or they at least show their horns and head when they're going through a divorce, right?
Sure.
I mean, divorce does not bring out the best in most people. Typically, it brings out the worst, especially when you're fighting for custody. So if you have this person who is doing these things that are not in the best interest of her child, and you're like, look, if you can't stop this, I'm not going to represent you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a coach or someone you might
suggest?
I'm Nicole's emailing me. I'm like, huh.
Well, I would say that I don't know if this was this for Annette? I didn't know. Was that for Annette or for me? I couldn't.
Yeah, for
Okay.
for either one of you. Do you have a coach do something? Do you?
Oh, if they're not already in their own counseling. I mean, you can call it counseling, you can call it a coach. It depends on the person's credentials, I guess. Someone they can work with. And heck, some people could probably work with a good friend who can help them through it. Go bitch to your friend and get it all out there, and then be more businesslike and appropriate in your communications with the other parent. Yes, there are all kinds of professional coaches, counselors. Some of them can be really, really tough and say, look, we are going to talk about what you're doing wrong and why you're doing it and how we're going to turn this around. Because the kind of behaviors that we just described by mom, they're going to hurt her bad if we have to go in front of a judge. Bad.
And we as lawyers we're not your therapist. I mean, to some degree, I think there's always that part where we're giving thoughts and there's that kind of back and forth conversation that you do see in therapy, but we are not your therapist. So, in this kind of situation, and if she was my client, I would 100% recommend that she be in therapy, because that's not my job. And maybe I can talk to the therapist and tell the therapist some things that I'm seeing that I'm concerned about that I want the therapist to work on,
And
but
she has a lot of anger,
Yeah.
and it's perfectly legitimate to be angry, but you can't let it affect your co-parenting and most importantly, your kids.
Well, that's one thing I do want. A lot of people have really good reasons to be pissed off in their divorce. They were screwed somehow, one way or the other, and they have every right to be pissed off. But what the court, I think, looks for is that you love your kids more than you hate your ex, and that you're willing to do what you need to do for the best interest of your children, getting through the divorce. And look, kids want to love their parents. Even they want to love abusive parents. That's just how kids are. You see kids, from DCS running to their parents. They want to be back together with them. They want to do that. And they want to love their parents. And I think it's really important for parents going through a divorce to really encourage, not just let them love their other parent, but encourage them to love their other parent.
Well, and what we hear a lot from our own clients is, but it's true. Everything I'm saying in front of the kids or on social media, it's true. I put on social media that he had an affair. It's true, Annette. Why can't I say that? Or he says, well, it's true that she quit her job and spent $18,000 last month on credit cards, but that's true. Why can't I say the truth? And then it all comes down to, okay, it's also true that the reason you have these children is because mom accidentally got pregnant on the first date, and so you had to get married. Are you going to tell your kids that too? I mean, these are children. You have to filter and decide what truth is going to be passed on to the kids.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things Weinstock says, right? It's like, well, did you have sex the other day? It's true. Are you going to tell them
Exactly.
every time you have sex? Are you going to tell them every time,
Right.
you know, that you're doing something? So
Right.
sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
I was gonna say there's a book that I really like, and I actually will have people read it in the parenting coordination context. It's called A Nasty Divorce, A Kid's Eye View, and it's by Marina Sabraki. I don't know if you've read it, Annette, but what I like about it is it's written from the kid's point of view, and it's about experience all the things that you just talked about from their point of view. And it really, you know, I think sometimes we forget as parents what it's like to be a kid. And just like Launi said, kids want to love their parents. So imagine being that kid, loving that parent, and seeing mom post on Facebook something so negative and harmful, and how much that hurts. And how, you know, I think, you know, we get in our bubble, especially with people who are going through divorce, and and I don't think it's abnormal. I think it's normal to be very inside yourself and very much feeling just about your selfish in a way. But I think that book is really great in thinking about putting yourself in your kid's shoes. And
the
how much
anger
pain
and the selfishness is
painful.
totally understandable and reasonable, but mom needs to keep that within her small circle of best friends, within her counseling sessions. She needs to keep it contained and deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay, so Nicole, let's talk about what your guy going into the house and stuff. What would you tell him?
yeah, let's trash him for a while.
Well, I mean, it's similar to the ideas that Annette was saying. I mean, both of us need to have conversations with our client about inappropriate behavior, especially behavior that is solely focused on making mom's life harder and playing into the paranoias that may already be there. I mean, in divorce, people that are married know how to press each other's button because they've been together and they know each other. So what he's doing, he knows is very much upsetting to her and very much triggering for her. You know, so he needs to cut it out. I have more than once said to clients, if you can't stop this behavior, then I can't be your lawyer. You need to find someone else, because I'm not your friend. I'm not your therapist. I'm your lawyer, and I'm doing my best to represent you, but I can't do that if you can't help yourself. You know, my job is not just to 100% support all of your behaviors, no matter what they are. That's not my job. My job is to help you get the best outcome. And some of your behaviors are not going to get you the best outcome. So, and that's the kind of conversation I would have with him. I think it's unacceptable. I would have a very strong talk with him about it. And if it happened again, I probably would not represent him anymore.
Okay, so let's talk real quick about mom's Etsy business. Well, mom's Etsy business and dad's online business. What kind of discovery do you guys do for that?
Well, I'll start by saying I love Etsy. And I've had cases about Etsy. And the first thing I did when I found out is go on and learn about the shop myself as the attorney, like what's in there, what's being sold. And you can actually learn quite a bit about the shop just by looking online. And that's only, you know, the client is just paying your rate to do that. You can see how many sales they've had. You can see the kind of products they sell and the price range. You can usually see, you know, how recently things were sold, even based on the reviews. So I think that would be the first step. I would look and say, is this a legit business? Because there also on Etsy are many businesses that don't sell items, that don't have a big kind of, you know, income source. I've seen those too. So I would do that first. That's my first step. And then I would have that conversation about where do we go from here? I would disclose what I found on Etsy to the other side, because I think that's my obligation, regarding that. And then, we would see how much more Annette needs. If she's feeling like, okay, I need a lot more because there's a lot more here, then we need to have a conversation, Annette and I, about whether we need to get someone in to help evaluate that. I mean, we can, if they need to look at the sales and what this business is worth and all of that, and that would be an evaluator. I mean, I can show you the Etsy page, I can show you the PayPal records, things like that, but I can't evaluate the value of that business. That's not my job. And so that would be the part that, and I would really want Annette to tell me if that's what she wants. If she feels this business has value and she wants to take it to the next step, then we'd need to have a conversation about how we figure out what the value is.
Well, and my understanding was the Etsy business is mom's business, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so I'd be telling
Oh,
mom, look, you're apparently a licensed teacher, and eventually at the end of this case, the court is going to attribute income to you at what you're capable of earning. So
Mhm.
is that the $30,000 that dad says you're making on Etsy, or is it the $45,000 that you can make as a full-time teacher? It's going to be one or the other for spousal maintenance purposes. Now, that's still a lot less than dad makes. So you're still going to qualify for some spousal maintenance on the final basis, in my opinion. 15-year marriage, very distinct difference in what the parties can make. If mom thinks, if she says, oh, well, I can't work as a teacher because I have a 2-year-old and I have this special needs 5-year-old, then we need to have serious conversations about that, because I believe the court will attribute full-time income to her in some fashion. And yes, there will be childcare costs for the 2-year-old, and there may be extra costs related to the 5-year-old, but the 5-year-old's issues are often dealt with in public schools. So I don't know about this special school thing. So then we get into the experts, and this is where the case really starts to get expensive. Mom's saying, I want a large amount of spousal maintenance and I don't want to work full time because of the kids. So we're talking a vocational evaluation for mom. What is she capable of? What should she be earning? We're talking about an evaluation of the child, the 5-year-old. What does he need? And we're probably talking about a full family custodial evaluation to look at. I'm assuming dad's still asking for 50-50 time, and
Right.
mom is not going to go there. If
Right.
that's the case, we're talking about a full family evaluation, meaning the psychologist talks to everyone, looks at each child's individual needs, the 2-year-old, the 5-year-old, and the teenager, and makes recommendations about parenting time. And it's possible that this evaluator would look at things and say, yeah, dad's capable of caring for everyone half the time, especially with the help of a nanny, which, by the way, I don't really think will be held against him very much, the fact that he has a nanny. And I'd have to tell my client that. Then we have to answer the question, well, isn't it better if the child's always with a parent? I don't want my child with a nanny when he could be with me. And then we have to go through that discussion, because the court's not likely to buy that argument. Anyway, we're talking about all these evaluations and getting recommendations from experts about what's the best parenting time plan for each of the 3 kids, what school does this child need, and based on all that, when is mom able to work, for how long, and for how much? So what I just described could easily be $40,000-$50,000 worth of expert evaluations.
And I want to say kind of the idea behind experts is they're providing information to the court to help the court make it, and to us to help the court make an analysis about these people and their needs and their financial needs and the value of things also. And the children and what they need and what would be best for them. So that's what an expert does. And you bring these experts in because that's not what we are. We are lawyers. We are experts in law, but we're not experts in these areas. So the experts come in and we pay them to give us an evaluation or, an opinion based on their credentials and their experience and their analysis of the information to do that. And I think, this is a cost benefit analysis. And I think especially with custody evaluations, you want to be careful. All of these evaluations are not necessary. Okay. but they're only necessary when the parties feel they can't agree with the information they have.
And can't reach an agreement mainly. So yeah, they definitely have to analyze. If they can't afford these evaluations, then you really need to hunker down and try to get them to settle. Because
And I think you could do like mediations throughout the
Sure.
Process, case, right?
Sure.
So that you can sort of get agreements on certain things. Like, can we just agree that we're going to use a limited scope assessment as opposed to, and they're just going to talk about, A, B, and C, so that you're not doing a full, $60,000
right.
evaluation.
A limited scope could be limited to what are the 5-year-old's needs educationally. And well, maybe that's the only, and the allegations about dad's substance use, looking into that. Those would be limited scope.
I think there's a domestic violence allegation too.
And, okay, that could be limited scope. Limited scope is not what's the appropriate parenting time. That is not limited. That is a full-blown evaluation. So
there's a big difference in cost, but for limited scope, you have to have a specific set of questions or issues that need to be evaluated. It can't be just what's the best thing to do here. Like you said, it has to be, is dad's a parent who can provide care for this child under these circumstances?
Right.
Yes or no?
Right. And as far as the allegations about him using Ritalin or something, well, frankly, based on these facts, I hope somebody's using Ritalin because they need a lot of energy. So I'm just kidding. But assuming the Ritalin would not be, I mean, that's a prescribed substance, so he may have it legitimately. But assuming he denies it and says, I'm not taking anything I shouldn't be, some substance testing for a period of time can show that or not. Hair follicle testing, is it in his hair for going back 90, 180 days, or some urinalysis showing whether, and that'll answer that question one way or the other.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that, because Nicole, if your client is using Ritalin and he's getting it prescribed by a friend, it's kind of like, well, so I mean, are you allowed to go if you need this substance, if you need that medication to function, it's legal to have it prescribed. You wouldn't want your client to say, no, I'm not taking it, and then have them test positive for it.
Well, it makes me upset because there's still a stigma associated with mental health medication and mental health treatment. I've had so many clients say, I feel really bad. I'm not doing okay, but I'm afraid to go to a therapist because I think it will be negative for the case. Or I'm,
I used to hear this more. Well, I'm older than you guys, but I used to hear this more like back in the 80s and 90s. People would say, well, I'm on Valium, or I'm on whatever the drug was back then. And I'm really concerned. My husband told me that he will get full custody because I take Valium. Yes. And I'm like, you're in a lot more trouble if you need the medication and aren't taking it than taking a prescribed medication.
And that's exactly what I tell them. The court wants to know that you're treating yourself.
Right.
The court wants to know that you're taking those steps. In fact, it's worse for you if you don't do those things. And that's where the court's going to get you. If you need medication, I mean, if the ADD medication helps you to organize your thoughts, reduces your impulse control issues, and helps you be a better parent in that sense. So you're not, kind of loosey-goosey all over the place, then you should be taking it.
So then the question is whatever the parent is taking, does it have an effect on parenting? And if that's what you're claiming, then that's a limited scope eval to see, is it affecting his parenting? If it's not, then take it.
Right.
And this, by the way, this applies to marijuana use. This is the latest problem we have because marijuana is now recreationally legal in Arizona. Yeah. So is it good for parenting? No, plenty of studies about that, but you have to show how it's affecting parenting.
Well, and I think, aren't there two now? I know nothing about marijuana. I'm learning. I'm trying to learn.
Sure.
I have,
Launi.
I have adult children. But isn't there like is it like a strain of marijuana that can make somebody be more focused and alert? And then the other strain that like puts them to sleep. I think that there's different strains for different things, right? Like
I don't know, but it's interesting that you know that. But I do
exactly.
I think that there is. Yeah, I think that there is. And I don't know that you can test for what kind of strain it is. So if you're saying, yeah, he's using marijuana or she's using marijuana, and I'm concerned. So I guess the driving under the influence would be problematic with marijuana.
Yeah.
Right, same as with alcohol.
And not
Alcohol's
being
legal.
present with the children is a problem. You know, if you're
Right.
like, if it makes you sleepy and you're not able to be, you know, and decision making, I think it can affect your decision making.
Right,
And
but there
edibles,
has,
right?
but there
Leaving
has to be
edibles out?
evidence of that. I don't think it's
Yeah.
presumed that if somebody smokes pot occasionally, that their parenting is compromised. It
Right.
has to be proven, and it's very hard to show.
Right.
So that's the discussion I have with mom relating to dad's alleged substance abuses. Tell me how it's affecting. Show me the evidence. Tell me what we're going to tell the court, because just saying Ritalin, that's not going to affect a judge's decision at all.
You know, and it's like, are they trying to get this person in trouble? Because if you're trying to get this person in trouble and you're trying to
Whoa.
get spousal maintenance,
Whoa.
these are contradictory things, right? You
Oh,
don't,
yeah.
it's like, I want him to go to jail, but I also want, you know, $15,000 a month in spousal maintenance. And when you get somebody arrested, they're not making that money. So you're really shooting yourself
Yeah.
in the foot at that point.
That's a
And
good point.
I've seen it happen.
And their medical license gets suspended, and then
Right.
the whole house of cards comes down.
Right. And I've seen it happen. Which, you know, look, I'm not saying that people should not turn in somebody who are maybe is committing fraud or something, but just know the consequences before you do. You know that you're not going to get any money, know that business is going to tank, before you try and get someone in trouble. And I think, you know, Annette, we had this conversation on our, thing with the taxes. You know,
Mhm.
how many times you get people saying, well, I didn't sign those, he forged my name or he signed them. It's like, well, you know,
Did you file a separate tax return then? Since you didn't sign that joint one, did you file a separate one? Well, no.
Yeah.
Okay. Which way do you want it?
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, you can't have everything. You can't, it's just not a time to just throw everything at the wall, see what sticks legally and try and get someone in trouble, no matter how angry you are, because it's just going to screw up your life.
Yeah.
And that's
you know,
about strategy, and that's about kind of prioritizing the concerns. And like I said, you know, if this Etsy shop, you know, after we've looked at it and I've shared it with Annette, and Annette looks at it and says, you know what, this is not worth a lot. You know what I mean? There's maybe 5 sales in the last 2 years. There's not, you know, that's just an assumption I'm making. You know, there's not a lot going on here. There's only a few products. I don't think it makes sense to spend the money on this,
Not.
because then you don't.
But it's the client's
Yeah.
decision.
Right.
You advise the client and say, if you
Yes.
want to go hire a business evaluator to look at this, that is absolutely your decision.
Sure, and I'm not
say
trying to
yes
say
or no.
that's not the case. I mean, just it's, you know, I think we've got you have to prioritize, you have to pick and choose, because I don't think that they would hire every expert for every issue in this fax pattern. I don't see that happening.
I
There's
don't-
got to be some that give.
I think
Right,
the
you
number
know.
of cases that could afford to hire all of those experts is, 5% or less.
Right.
Oh, for sure. And of those 5% that we do, that's only 20% of all the cases filed, right? So it's
Right,
5% of the 20%. Okay, so here's a question, because, okay, so Annette, father has created a website.
Mhm.
And this website is going to be self-sustaining. He doesn't have to do anything on it anymore. Just collect money that comes in. He's posted everything he's needed to do. It's an ongoing thing. Certainly there's no need to change it in the foreseeable future. But it's got, 5 sales right now. So it's really kind of
Right.
nothing. It's a matter of just time and the longer websites online, the more SEO it has.
Right.
So it's worth nothing right now, right? Other than the website name in there, but it's got to be worth something, because the work's done and it's
Right.
going to eventually make millions. So what do you do with that? What does your client want out of that?
Well, if it's true that this website is done and there's no more effort to be put into it, then that was all created while the parties were together. So that is 100% a community asset.
Sure.
So, husband might say, oh, I'm willing to buy you out of this. You don't want to mess with this. I'll give you $5,000 and I'll buy you out of it, even though it's not worth anything. And wife could consider, yeah, I'll let you buy me out. Or she could say, why would I want you to buy me out? It needs nothing going forward. It's totally self-sustaining. I want half. Let's set up an LLC if there's not already an entity set up. We set up a LLC to own it. I'm a 50% owner, you're a 50% owner. I want 50% of everything this does going forward. That's my position.
Yeah, and I think that's the easiest position, right? I mean, there's nothing else to do. That's just the easiest thing.
Right. I
to
think
kinda
that's
do.
going to be the disputed fact, though, because husband's going to say, oh, I spend all kinds of time with it. It's going to take all kinds of effort of mine going forward, and I'm not going to work for my ex-wife. So I think that's going to be the dispute.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and probably like I have to add, the more we'll sell more if I advertise, and what does that look like? And
exactly.
but maybe they agree then at that point that they hire an advertising company out
Then
of
you've
that
got-
income that comes in.
Then
and then
you've got
nothing
these
else.
parties in business together, which is really almost never a good idea, especially with these facts. The other question or position I might take is, okay, this has a lot of potential. It's not there yet. Let's sell it to a third party and just turn it over. So a third party who sees the same potential that we see will pay us now. We each get 50% and the third party can run with it. So
Oh,
those are
that's interesting.
possible.
Or sell it to a third party and each keep a percentage and let it
That
go
too.
that way. Yeah.
That too.
Okay. And Nicole, anything on that one?
No, I agree. I mean, sometimes it's kind of a ploy, and that's what I was thinking about is when you say, oh, you can have it for that price, then
Right.
suddenly they don't want it for that price.
Right.
Right.
Oh, that's always a good question is
Yeah.
when husband says, oh, I'll pay you 5,000 for your half of it. And wife says, no, I'll pay you $5,000 for your
Right.
half. And he
Right.
says, oh, no. I don't
No,
want to.
no, it's not worth that. No, it's not worth that. I just always think that's funny because I've seen that a lot, but
I've done that with clients so many times, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, he wants to sell. Okay, tell him you'll pay him
great,
$10,000
great.
for
Yeah,
it.
10,000. Right.
He wants the house to be valued at, 350,000. You think it's worth 650,000? Okay, take it for 350,000.
Right.
Right.
That's right. I'm kicking an extra 10,000 for, good measure.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
You're still getting a great bargain.
Right. Okay, so I want to go back to Annette. You had talked about Dad's work schedule and the fact that he had a nanny, and you said you didn't think the court would care. And I just wanted to follow up on that a little bit because, if mom's going to have to work, mom's going to need some kind of childcare also, right?
That's right.
And I think that's a really important point for people to understand. Just because somebody has a nanny, one, it probably makes the person more available, calmer, especially if they're, high strung, that they've got somebody there with the kid. But the court's going to let somebody have a nanny for the time that they're in work, just like you have a childcare, just like you have preschool or anything like that, or a parent.
Can I just jump in on that? And what I always tell my client is I was on the bench and I had a nanny, so if you think for a second that your judge isn't using childcare for their children, then you're wrong. I mean, and I'm not going to be okay with you being in front of me, if I'm the judge and saying, oh, it's terrible that you have a nanny, the children should always be with their parents. I'm going to be like, what? I'm doing that? Are you saying I'm a bad parent?
Everyone at that courthouse and in that courtroom who has children is using some kind of childcare. The kids are not in a back closet in the judge's office. So yeah, that's a difficult conversation to have with clients, because a lot of them will tell us, the mothers will tell us, this was our agreement. I realize that a lot of society uses childcare and after school care and nannies, but our agreement when we had this child was that I would stay home with him, her, them until they're in third grade. Okay, you also had an agreement till death do you part, and that one's going away. So, and it's not the end of the world that your agreement that the children are going to see you and only you for 8 years is changing. It's not the end of the world. And yes, judges are not going to buy, judges and evaluators are not going to buy that having your child in after school care or with a nanny is horrible for the child's development. That's just not going to fly.
add to that too, because for some people, I've seen clients who have had the kids go to, say, mom's house after school, and then dad picks them up, from work. And for some people, that's okay, when they're not high conflict. But transitions for kids in high
Yeah.
conflict relationships is really detrimental to them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to minimize those, the dirty looks, the yelling, the
Videoing,
videoing, saying nasty
Where's
things.
the backpack? You didn't pack lunch again. You forgot the lunchbox again. I mean, the little things like that happen constantly.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important for parents to understand that. It's important for parents to understand that, look, going back and forth twice a day is not an easy thing for most kids.
That's really
and
hard.
You're not
even
doing
if
them
their
a
house is-
favor by doing that. You're not helping.
Right.
I mean, it's actually probably more harmful than good. I
Yeah.
think.
And unless you've got parents who are like really great and say, hey, okay, you're gonna come here till after school. Dad's gonna pick you up. Let me know if I can do anything for you. If you've got, and there are people I know that do that, and
Right.
that's fine, because they get along. They're not breaking into each other's houses. They're not, sending nasty messages and being terrible to each other.
Right.
But I think for the most part, you just don't want those. If you're in a high conflict situation, that's not the type of parenting time that you should be doing.
And here's the state of the
Totally.
law on this. I mean, the law basically says the court is going to determine parenting time if the parents can't agree. And once that parenting time is determined, each parent is kind of an independent contractor of his and her time. And that means when dad has the kids, dad decides on their day-to-day activities, what time they brush their teeth, what kind of toothpaste they use, what they have for lunch, what he puts in their lunch, and what childcare he uses during his time. And the same as with mom. So the law treats the parents as two independent entities. And that's what's hard for some parents to understand, because you often have one parent trying to impose his or her feelings on the other. Well, you're not feeding him right. Well, you sent him to school with pants that were up to his knees and they're too short. You need to dress him better and you need to do this better. Parents can't do that once they're separated.
And once you're, I mean, during the marriage, that may have worked fine. It may have been, you guys are, but you're not now. I mean,
Exactly.
and so, honestly, the more you understand that each party can do their own separate thing, the better it is for the kid. The kid will understand, the kid will adapt. It's harder for the parent.
Absolutely, the child will. But that is the transition that's the hardest for most parents.
I think,
going from the family unit to separated.
As the only one divorced with kids in this group, in this panel, I can agree. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. It's tough to let go of that control of your kids when you've had it.
Exactly.
I think that's really what it is. It's just control. And so the way I did things was the way I did things when we were married, and the way I continued to do things when we were divorced. But there's reasons that we were divorced, right? And in my case, he had different ideas of different ways to do things. And as much as I didn't like them, it was his parenting time.
You don't control them 100% of the time anymore. Yeah.
No, you don't get to control them at all. And that's hard. Listen, that's hard. That's so hard to get the first part of the divorce where you're giving up these littles, to somebody else. I
get that. I get that. It's a transition. It's a learning process. And that's another reason the parties should be in some kind of counseling for the transition.
And
the kids.
Yeah,
Yes.
I do agree with the kids. And start doing things. People start, make it if you have the kids Monday, Tuesday, and he has Wednesday, Thursday, and then you alternate weekends, start doing something on Mondays and Tuesdays regularly. That's a fun thing for you to get your mind off of, to get out of it, because you can't hold on to that. It's really a big problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know this isn't really in here, but I do want your guys' opinion. We probably have to wrap up fairly soon. On right of first refusal.
No.
Well, I was actually going to bring it up and just talk about it for a second, but go ahead. Yeah.
You go ahead. Start.
Oh, because I was going to say, obviously everything's pointing to that. So what is right of first refusal? That is where if one parent is unable to care for the child for a set amount of hours or days, so I'm unable to care for the child overnight because I'm going, to Napa with my girlfriends, the other parent is given the first option or the first right to care for the children before they bring in any other care providers, including grandparents. And people are consistently wanting these things in their parenting plan. And I'll be the first to say that I am consistently trying to talk people out of having these things in their parenting plans, because I have yet to see a case where it doesn't cause probably more conflict than good. I mean,
Well, and here's why. If that clause is not in the parenting plan, the parents are free to ask the other parent. It's not contractually mandated. They're free. They're always free to ask, hey, I'm going out of town for the weekend. Would you like to take Julie for my weekend? Yes, no, can't do it. They're always free to do that. But when they are contractually bound to do it is when the problems come up, and it just becomes one more thing for them to fight about. So no one's saying you shouldn't ask the other parent occasionally if they want to care for their children while you're gone. Absolutely, you can do that. But the contractual obligation is just a huge problem.
Well,
and enforcement. I mean, when parents come to me and like, oh, he didn't do it. He was, imagine the amount of work we have to do to even prove that. I would just say they're impossible to enforce.
Right.
So here I had a private investigator outside of his house, and he left the house for 4 hours and it wasn't for work, and I can prove it. And he should have offered it to me. I mean, that's what it's going to take. And the court's going to be like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here?
This goes back to what we talked about earlier, though. One parent saying it is always better for the child to be with a parent than a third-party caretaker. And we already dispelled that. And obviously that's not always best. Kids go to school. I mean, under that argument, every child would be homeschooled. They would never leave. So it's part of the same problem. Is I don't want a babysitter. I don't want grandmother with my children. I want them. I mean, that's where it's really out of hand.
I think I'm a little bit different than you guys on this one, because I think for little kids, little kids,
like what?
That,
like
3 months, 4 months,
oh,
5 months.
Babies.
Infants, children under 2 or 3, I'm totally with you.
Right. And then I think it needs to be an overnight or something. And I think grandparents need to be allowed.
And if it's an overnight, yes. Right. If it's the first right of caretaking that are such a problem are the ones that say 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours. Overnights, I get it. And
overnights with that, I mean, let them go to their grandparents if they get to go to their grandparents. I mean, that's a huge one.
There should be a grandparent and immediate family exception.
Right. And then I think there also should be something in there that talks about, when it cuts off, because I could tell you, I've seen people who've had like 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds having sleepovers at people's houses, and they're saying, you're pawning the kids off. And it's like, no, the kid is actually hanging out with a friend.
Exactly.
They wanted to hang out with the friend, and when they're hanging out with that friend, I'm going up north for 24 hours or whatever.
Right.
So I think that they're, especially like the 4 hours, I'm going golfing, the kid's 12, can be left alone.
Yeah, totally.
That's ridiculous because golf takes 6 hours, so it's not really going to do it.
And according to my husband, it takes 12. So that's weird.
He tells you it takes 12.
All right.
And a big point here is it's not just our opinion here. I think almost all judges who have sat on family court and who are sitting on family court understand this is a big problem now. They only need to see one of these really ridiculous fights to say, no, not doing that anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's just best if you agree on specifics. If you want that, get the specifics agreed to, and then don't go crazy. And
I just say use your own judgment. Do not have that clause in the plan. Be the bigger person and offer to the other parent if you're going to be gone. And if the other parent never offers you and you want to retaliate by never offering them, fine, retaliate. but I'd
Well,
prefer.
right, and if you
Yeah.
thought it was in the best interest of the child, then it's still in the best interest of the child, and you would still be doing what's in the best interest
You
of
know,
the
the
child.
funny
Exactly.
thing is, I don't necessarily think you have to offer, I mean, you can, but I think children, you know, enjoy having these other people in their lives. I'm a big believer in more people in children's lives, the better if they're positive, good people. They get to
Yeah,
learn about how to
and
deal
that's-
with different personalities. That's real life. Real life is when you grow up, you're meeting hundreds of people and they're all in your life and you have to be able to interact with them and have relationships with them. So, you know, if you're only with your parents and your grandparents, you're not doing that.
Right.
And that
I agree with that, but I also
Yeah.
think that there are, I'm not, I think somebody needs to teach like a step parenting, somebody write a step parenting book on how to do the step
Okay.
parenting appropriately, because
Oh, there's
Um,
lots of
I-
step parenting books.
yeah, they're not great, the ones that I've
I-
read, but
I'm not an expert on that by far.
but yeah, I've, again, from personal experience, have seen some traumatic stuff come out of that issue. And so, I'm like, a one overnight, maybe not a big deal, but if somebody's going out of town for 3, 4, 5 days,
Sure. But those are the exceptions.
for sure. And I think if that's what you're going to do, then it needs to be more spelled out so that it's just not the regular day-to-day 4 hours, even an overnight when they're older, maybe it's a 3 overnight when they're 12 or whatever, something bigger so that they're just not
Right.
staying. Okay, does anybody, I know this is so much stuff and we have so much information.
We haven't resolved the final parenting time. We'll continue to mediate that. And Nicole will work on her client to get him to agree to less than week on, week off, because the guy's working 3 12s a week.
Yeah, well, my client's already he's offering 12,000 in spousal a month for indefinite right
see,
now.
and wow.
Take
Wow.
it or leave it.
Hey, real quick, what about the stalking DV stuff? What would you, Annette, tell your client to do about the stuff? Now, I just found out from Launi Sheldon, by the way, that he can go into a phone and pull off all the erase stuff.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh
Which
yeah.
I didn't know that he could do. I know that I knew you could do that from a computer. I just didn't know it was as easy to do that off of a phone.
That's why you hear about celebrities destroying their phones, not only deleting, but actually destroying the physical phone, because that's the only way to really make sure the stuff is gone.
Oh,
So,
all right.
so,
There you go.
yeah, I talked about that a little bit in terms of the stalking, because she needs to have the house swept for bugs, her car, and all her phone and all her devices swept for malware, because this guy has deposited something on a device, or he has listening devices in her house. So she needs to spend some serious money doing that. Until we can get to court and get temporary orders for exclusive use, I would tell her to put cameras in the house.
Or reach an agreement on that.
We're
going to agree.
I'm assuming that I tried to reach an agreement with you and your client hasn't cooperated yet, but I would tell her to put cameras in her house to catch the guy in there, because otherwise she's going to sound kind of crazy. Oh, he's going in and rearranging my dishes. I'm sorry, that's not going to help much. I need a video of the guy in your house.
Yes,
I'm very, this is just me personally. I'm really anti-camera and anti-video, like in general for clients.
In your own house?
I just think they're hard to, for clients, they're hard to introduce. In my house, I have cameras. But I just worry about, I am very, very reluctant to ever advise a client to do that. I understand what you're saying, but
I only say it because
very
she
careful
says
with it makes me nervous.
She says there's someone in her house. So if she wants to prove it, she needs cameras. Otherwise, she needs to just, keep changing the locks, and then we go get orders to keep him out. So that's what I say about the stalking issues, is we got to spend some money.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I'd love to do a part 2 on this, because I know there's so much more, but we did really hit on most of the big things. I'd love to come back and do one on what you guys do to find hidden money, or where, what you're going to subpoena to kind of find out what's happening, and how do you make people part of this, which was not read, was that there were discovery requests that weren't necessarily completed.
Responded to,
and I know Annette likes to talk about spousal maintenance, so I know
I,
Don't want to
no.
talk about that.
no, we're not going to talk about spousal maintenance.
So, hey, Annette, real quick, would you advise your client to get an order of protection?
I didn't see anything in here that would send me, that would tell me to get her an order of protection. I suppose she could argue to a judge that my house, he's walking in and out of the house.
Mhm.
I don't think that rises to it. There's no orders keeping him out of the house, and it's his house too. So I don't think that leads to an OP. She claims that he has caused some bruises, but in the past, she told the hospital the bruises were caused by something else. So I have a problem with veracity there and how a judge would look at that. So I didn't see an order of protection coming from these facts so far.
I
now-
want to throw out that people jump into getting an order of protection, and I think you really need to be careful and thoughtful and make sure it's appropriate in your case. And I also think unless there is abuse happening to the children, they should not be on it. The order of protection is not meant to be used as a custody vehicle.
Right.
And people do that too because they think then he'll never see the kids. And really, you hurt yourself in doing that. And I think the court, that's a negative thing. You should not be adding children to orders of protection unless absolutely 100% they have been the victim of violence, you know, and there's, you know, clear proof and evidence that it was that party who perpetrated it.
Right.
Yeah, and I do think, you know, judges really do believe that that's a strategic thing.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's often held against people. So now, also, I think there's a lot of people who don't admit that they were abused when they go to the hospital. I don't think
Sure.
that that's uncommon.
Agreed. Agreed.
But, you know, talk to your attorneys first before filing anything, because again, it can make your case look so bad. But then it can also make your case look really bad if you didn't, right? Because then you get asked, well, did you file an order of protection? Did you do this? Did you call the police? Was there a police report? So it depends on each party's individual facts on what that looks like, and whether or not that they should file for an order of protection. But it's each one of those decisions to get that is really case specific, and it's really fact specific.
And they need to know the consequences of filing a false, one that turns out to be exaggerated or false later. There can be serious consequences in final custody orders.
Yeah, let me say that. Tell your attorneys everything, even if it's bad, because they can only guide you with the facts that they know.
And we've already heard the worst of, we've heard the worst of the worst. It's not going to shock. It's not going to shock anybody.
And they need to know. They need to know how to advise you. They need to know what to say. Like, is it a good idea to get an order of protection because I also punched him? Then probably not.
Right.
You know, I shattered the dishes, you know, in the kitchen and threw them against the walls. Then probably you shouldn't get that, because he's going to go back and get one, and now you're going to look like the bad guy.
Right.
And then also be careful, you know, if you're calling the police on an order of protection, because if you're the one calling and you've broken something or done something wrong, you can be just in as much trouble.
That's the problem.
I just think generally they're kind of overused and they're misused a lot, and they have a purpose and a place. But I agree with you. The best thing you can do is kind of talk to somebody, your attorney, and make sure that this is the right thing for you to do, because it can really go either way, and they can hurt your case. Absolutely.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it. And hopefully we will get, you know, a part 2 when you guys all get back and get some more time.
Thank you both. Enjoy
Thank you so much.
Thanks.